Lesson 33 Use Action State. 1. Introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I want to walk you through a powerful hook in React called useActionState. This tool bridges the world of form submission actions with component state, enabling you to manage interactive forms in a more declarative way. By the end of this session, you'll understand how and when to use it, what returns it gives you, and what caveats to watch out for. 2. What is useActionState and when do we use it? useActionState is a hook whose purpose is to allow your component to respond to the result of a form action. Typically in React you might submit a form, run an asynchronous operation, and then update local state once the result is back. useActionState formalizes this process. You pass in an action function and an initial state, and React gives you back the current state, an action to trigger, and a flag to indicate whether the action is still in progress. You'd use this whenever you have a form submission or some action that returns a value, and you want the returned value to become state in your UI. 3. What the hook returns and how to think of it. When you call useActionState, you get three things. First, a piece of state that initially equals the initial value you provided, and then after the action runs, the returned value becomes the new state. Second, an action, or a function, that you can tie to your form submission or button press. When invoked, it runs your provided logic and updates state accordingly. Third, a Boolean flag that tells you whether the invocation is still pending, i.e., if the action has been triggered and hasn't resolved yet. This allows you to show loading indicators or disable UI accordingly. 4. Useful scenarios and benefits. There are several scenarios where useActionState adds value. If you are using server actions or server functions and want to reflect their results in your UI seamlessly, this hook handles the result state propagation. It simplifies the pattern of submit form right pointing arrow get result right pointing arrow display result by folding the state management into a single hook. It improves user experience because you get the isPending flag for free, enabling you to reflect waiting states without custom logic. If you're working with frameworks that support server components or progressive enhancement, useActionState helps you get immediate feedback even before full client hydration. 5. Parameter details and what to watch. There are a few key details and things to watch. The first parameter is the action function. When the form is submitted, this function is called. But note, when you use this hook, your action function's signature changes slightly. It receives the current state, previous value, as its first argument, then the usual form data or arguments. The second parameter is the initial state. Any serializable value you like. That becomes your state until the first action runs. After that, the initial state becomes irrelevant because the returned value from the action takes over. There is an optional third parameter, a permalink string. This is relevant when you render a form on a page with dynamic content and you may navigate before the bundle loads. It helps tie the form state into the URL workflow. If your form causes a navigation before hydration, you must ensure the same form component, with the same action and permalink, is rendered on the destination page so React can maintain the link between state and form. 6. Caveats and gotchas. Because the action function receives the previous state as its first parameter, you must adapt your logic accordingly. If you ignore this, you may lose your form data or misinterpret the arguments. In environments without server components, or where you treat this just as local state, useActionState essentially behaves like React local state. So you lose less, but you also may gain less. If you provide a permalink but change your form component or underlying action, React will not be able to link the result state correctly. Always ensure consistency between the component present at the destination and the component source. The isPending flag is useful, but it is only meaningful if the action is asynchronous or triggers a transition. If everything is synchronous, it may not provide much benefit. 7. Summary and key takeaways. Let me summarize. useActionState is a valuable hook when you have forms or actions that return values and you want the result to drive UI state. It gives you a state variable, an action to trigger, and a loading indicator flag. You provide the action, the initial state, and optionally a permalink if navigation is involved. The action receives the current state as its first argument, which is an important distinction. In modern React applications, especially those using server actions or progressive frameworks, useActionState simplifies the flow from form submission to UI result.